Our next speaker is going to talk about Indigenous wisdom on mental health and wellness. Our dear friend Norm Leech is the current executive director from Frog Hollow Neighbourhood House and our grandmother Earth. Norm, always a pleasure to have you, always an honor to see you, my friend. And Norm just got married recently, so congratulations on that. And she's a beautiful woman as well from Japan, Mariko, a very lovely person.
I'll begin by acknowledging the land itself first. The land was here first. And our relationship with the land is different than a colonized relationship with land. The land is our relative. She's our ancestor. She's our greatest grandmother. She was here first. She's the ancestor we share with the dinosaurs, in fact. And she has given us everything. Everything we've ever eaten or drank or used for medicine or shelter, she gifted us. And she did all that without question, without limit, without condition, without interruption. And so when someone does that, gives you everything forever without condition, that is the definition of love. So we understand that she must love us a great deal to have gifted us with all that forever. So much so that we know that every cell and molecule and atom of our bodies is from her. And for all our ancestors has returned to her. And so that's the relationship that we have with the land. And that's a little bit different than the colonized relationship with land. We have not turned her into property. Having acknowledged the land itself, we acknowledge the people who've taken care of these lands for at least 10,000 years. And I won't list them again, but just to say that they did such a responsible job of taking care of these lands for so long. And Indigenous people lived everywhere. We still live everywhere. We cared for these lands for 10,000 years in such a good way that I used to say that they were as good as new when the explorers arrived. But I was corrected because they weren't as good as new. They were in fact better than new. The people understood it was their responsibility to improve it if they could, to leave it as good as or better than it was provided to them, which is why when the explorers did arrive, they found the largest forests on the planet, in the solar system, probably the galaxy, maybe the universe. They found the largest salmon runs in the world, the largest caribou herds in the world, the largest buffalo herds in the world were here. They were amazed. It was beyond their imagination, the things they found in the territories that we cared for 10,000 years. So we acknowledge all that amazing work so that because of all that work and the gifts of the grandmother, that we also get to benefit from those gifts and also share our gifts to help each other and the people and the land. So that's how I do a land acknowledgement. Now, just some other things to acknowledge. Joseph has said I worked with the Aboriginal community policing. I'm also trained in trauma therapy and Indigenous focusing oriented therapy. We had to become experts in trauma because we are so recently colonized here in BC. Where I'm from, Leech, you know it as the town of Lillooet. Our lands surround the town of Lillooet. Simon Fraser was the first explorer in 1808, which is barely 200 years ago. So my great-grandmother's great-grandmother was probably alive before then. It's been recent for us. We have not fully adjusted or healed or accepted colonization in British Columbia. And that is reflected in these acknowledgements that acknowledge that it has not been completed. It was not done correctly when these lands were settled and taken. So in healing these understandings, so we also work in the downtown east side Vancouver, which probably reflects the worst situations possible and the worst examples of the intergenerational traumas and the effects of those traumas on Indigenous people probably in Canada, the downtown east side, we are overrepresented in virtually every negative social health indicator that is measured in Canada. We are overrepresented. We either lead or we're top 3. Shortest life expectancy, highest incarceration rates, highest rates of children in care, highest rates of suicide, highest rates of being murdered, highest rates of everything. We are dying of more things, of everything, faster and more often than everybody else. And yet we're the only naturally growing and the fastest growing population in the country. How is that possible? Well, that's a bigger, longer story. But we've heard this morning about some responses to these mental health crises. And so governments do what they do. They react and they respond to increasing numbers of mental health challenges in our youth. Can we just stop traumatizing them? Can we? Why do we have to come up with new ways to respond to their reactions, to their traumas, rather than just stop the trauma? So in our work with the Indigenous community and understanding the intergenerational traumas that we are trying to heal, so we seek the root causes of those traumas. And for us, it's pretty clear. They all started at the same time. Homelessness, mental health, substance use, violence, they began when colonization arrived. And so if we look at human history, what is the greatest source of trauma in human history? Colonization. So are we really believing, and I'm going to raise some questions here, is it possible for colonized solutions to solve the problems that were caused by colonized actions? We don't think so. Our greatest success in healing trauma is to go back to the ancient ways, to understand the differences between a colonized worldview and an Indigenous worldview. We talk about connection to land. We feel that connection so deeply in the cells and bones of our body. We know that connection. Colonized people have been disconnected from land. They've been disconnected from each other. One of the tenets of Western philosophy is, I think, therefore I am. Quote of René Descartes, one of the architects of Western philosophy. That means I am here, and everything else is not I. You're not I, you're separate. I'm separate. We're individuals. I'm alone in here. You're alone in there. In that universe, everyone is alone. What is the fastest growing mental health challenge in cities around the world? Loneliness. How has humanity come to this point? We were never alone. In that universe, that's a form of insanity to believe that you're alone. We are connected to the land. We are connected to each other. We are connected to our ancestors. We are connected to everything, everywhere, all the time. That's the way we're supposed to be. Colonized ideas and concepts have told you all that you are all alone. If you think you're alone, then none of this is you, none of this is me, and I'm not related, then I can treat the land like property. I can treat the trees like property. I can treat the animals like property. I can treat my new wife like property. I can treat my children like property. I can treat people of different color and religion and language like property. That's a problem. But that's one of the foundation principles of colonized ways of being and thinking and behaving. So, can we reconnect? Do you have a sense of connection? Do you have a sense of understanding and relation to everything? Can you restore that connection? Can you go back, each of you, in your family history, to the place where your ancestors, you might have to go back 10, even 20 generations, to the place where your ancestors lived in one place for 1,000 years. There is a place where your family, your ancestors had a connection to land that was that deep and spiritual, that they understand that everything that they had and had learned came from that land. And they knew that that land must love them so much to give them all that forever. And when you have that relationship with land, then that changes your relationship with everything. Because then you understand that you are part of. You are connected to everything. You are part of. You are not separate. That is a problem. When you start to believe that you are separate, that you are alone, that you are isolated, that you are divided, that is the beginning. That is the most horrible trauma imaginable. In our criminal legal systems, we do not base them on crime and punishment. That is not effective. We learned that. We know that. Our systems are based on healing and balance and harmony. This is... So, and the solution is to reconnect people. So, I had a point there. Now where did it go? It'll come back to me. So in our systems, the worst punishment we could imagine to inflict on someone is not death. The worst punishment we ever imagine is to tell someone, you have to go be alone now. You are banished. You cannot be here. Your imbalance is so profound that you have proven you cannot live here with us. You have to go be alone. And that's a terrifying universe to us. That is worse than death. But that is the starting point of Western philosophy. And it shows. In our work, we worked with missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. That was a major focus of our work for so long. We had to learn, okay, what is the situation? Well, we had to understand that the Canadian legal system, probably one of the most modern, progressive, liberal legal systems in the world. When women come to our office and say, something has happened, something terrible has happened, we have difficulty really encouraging them to report because we know and they know what's going to happen. We know the data. Fewer than 1 in 10 of reports of violence against women actually gets reported because they know. Fewer than 1 in 10 of those reports will lead to charges because that's the system. And fewer than 1 in 10 of those charges will lead to convictions. And this is Canada. And the Me Too movement is global. And we see that as another outcome. And I don't know if it can be proven that it's not an objective of colonized ways of systems and being. Because it's consistent. And those systems are everywhere. The legal system, the written laws, the education system, the healthcare system, the monetary system. Even this language itself is not our language. All these laws are written in English, which is not our language. So ask yourselves, what is the root cause of the traumas? Because it's the traumas that cause these behaviors and cause these outcomes of mental health imbalance, of substance use, and it's showing up in our youth. And the answers are in our ancient ways, in our ancient connections to land and the ancestors and each other. And to understand that none of us is really alone, ever. We were never meant to be alone or to think that we're alone. And whichever ideas gave root or gave rise to those ideas We just see them as insane. It's a form of insanity, and it shows. So if you're interested in learning more about the work that we do, I'm bringing that work forward to the Frog Hollow Neighbourhood House and the other neighbourhood houses, and to restorative practices in the city of Vancouver and the Vancouver Police Department and the Vancouver School District, and bringing trauma tools to the frontline workers in the downtown east side of Vancouver and across the country. And we're advancing those ideas to have people understand the root causes of these symptoms, which are the traumas caused by thousands of years of colonization and the ideas that underpin those processes. So that's my message.
Thank you, Norm. Really appreciate it.